We have a 2004 Cadillac Escalade. We're going to go through the steps in order to replace the fuel pump. Before doing any fuel system repair, always bleed the pressure off the system. We'll do this by using our pressure relief valve on our pressure gauge. Be sure and capture the fuel into a safe container. We'll disconnect the negative battery cable before beginning the repair. In order to do a proper fuel pump replacement, we need to clean the inside of the tank, and that will require the removal of the tank. At the front left corner of the tank, disconnect the fuel line. To gain access to this fitting, you'll have to reach over the front cross member. This fitting can be very difficult to see. You may be tempted to lower the tank slightly in order to gain access to this fitting. This could damage the nylon line. Keep in mind there may be some residual pressure here. Be sure and capture it in a safe container. Disconnect the emissions line. At the rear of the tank, disconnect the two emissions lines from the carbon canister. Disconnect the fuel vent line and filler line. With the fuel tank properly supported, remove the tank strap. With the tank partially lowered, disconnect the electrical connections. You'll have to remove the safety retainer on the fuel pump connector. Remove the tank from under the vehicle and clean the top of the tank before removing the module assembly. With the outside of the tank cleaned, remove the fuel line and the two emissions lines. You'll need to remove the old retainer clips. For ease of installation, install the retainer back into the fitting. Using a non-ferrous brass punch, turn the locking ring counterclockwise to remove. Be sure and inspect the locking ring, make sure it's not damaged in any way that would hinder its reuse. As you remove the module assembly, you'll have to disconnect two emissions lines. There will be residual fuel in the reservoir at the bottom of the module assembly. Be sure and capture this into a safe container. At this point, we need to drain the remaining fuel into a safe container and then clean the inside of the tank. We want to be sure that the tank is as clean as possible to allow a clean environment for the fuel pump. With the inside of the tank thoroughly cleaned, we're ready to install the new Airtex module assembly. Install the tank seal into its location in the top of the tank. As you lower the module assembly into the tank, reattach the emissions lines, making sure not to affect the sending unit in any way. Fully install the module assembly into the tank, making sure the fuel line fittings are properly oriented. Install a tank ring with a non-ferrous brass punch, turning it clockwise. Make sure that the tank ring is fully rotated into position. Reconnect the emissions line and fuel line. For ease of installation, remove the fuel line retaining clip from the fuel line and install into the fitting. With the tank partially raised into position, reconnect the electrical connections, making sure to reinstall the safety retainer on the fuel pump connector. Fully raise the tank into position and reinstall the tank strap. At the front of the tank, reconnect the emissions line and the fuel line. At the rear of the tank, reconnect the emissions lines to the carbon canister. Reattach the fuel filler hose and vent hose. With the repair complete, reattach the negative battery cable. Cycle a key 3 to 4 times in order to charge the system. Start the vehicle and monitor pressure, making sure it's within vehicle specifications. Now before we remove our pressure gauge, we'll shut the vehicle off and bleed the pressure using our pressure gauge, making sure to capture any fuel into a safe container.